So here's another one. It had nothing to do with technology. Vikings came before Europeans, clad in armor and far more brutal than the indigenous, yet we still prevented them and stopped them. First of all, Vikings are Europeans. The Vikings come from Scandinavia, Norway, Denmark, and that's Europe. Now, if you want to talk about the Vikings, I know about the Vikings too. Anyway, what you're talking about is Leif Erikson when he landed in the Americas, in North America, way up north in Newfoundland. Now, I'm going to put a map here so you can see what I'm talking about. Now, when I speak my history, I'm talking about when the Spaniards invaded the Americas. First they came to the Caribbean, then they hit Mexico, then they went south to South America, north to what is now the American Southwest, and they've been fighting with the natives ever since then. Now what you're talking about has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Vikings did come before the Spaniards. You said they came before the Europeans, but they are Europeans. They're just anyway, Spaniards, French, English, they're all Europeans, but they came and hit this part from 1492 onward. And yes, the Vikings did hit North America around the 10th, 11th century, and they were fighting with them. And they obviously must have defeated them because they have a couple Viking settlements. There's one right there. They have a couple Viking settlements still today that they found, but the Vikings must have left. So they must have been defeated or they just bounced. But there is written things that they fought. Now, as for armor and technology, yeah, the Vikings had armor. This is the type of armor they had. But the Vikings were about 500 years, 400 or 500 years before the Spaniards invading America. So this is 500 years before the history I'm talking about. So the technology wasn't advanced. It's 500 years before that. So they did have armor. They had chainmail. They mostly used axes in their shields and their strength. The Native Americans also had weapons. They had spears, arrows, clubs, even boomerangs. Now they wore war paint and they went to war too. So it's not like they were just innocent people and they had never went to war. They were warriors. They actually had war councils. Now if you want to learn more about Viking history and all that, I could talk about that at another time. I'm just responding to this comment. So yes, they did come clad in armor, but you gotta remember, 500 years before the Spanish, it wasn't so advanced. They did have swords, and they did have axes and shields, and they did have armor, but they wore a light armor. They like to keep it light so they could fight and move around faster. Plus, they had to sail all the way across the ocean. But anyway, nobody really knows. All the historians can do is speculate, look at the archaeological evidence, read the Vikings mythological epics, their stories. I don't remember what they're called, but I think they have two books that I know about, or epics, legends, the Vikings lore. One was about Leif Erikson, and one was about his dad, Eric the Red. There might be more to it, that's all I know. Anyway, so the first sentence had nothing to do with technology. That's an ignorant statement in itself. When the Spanish came, they had ships, horses, war dogs, swords, advanced armor, plus war tactics and strategies. The Native Americans that they were fighting with, the indigenous people that they were fighting with, were also warriors, like I said, and they had numbers, millions, and they still lost. And the reason that they lost is because of technology. The technology from Europe was more advanced than the technology of the Americas, and that's all there is to it. As for the Aboriginals and the Vikings, that's a whole nother story. The Vikings came, and I'm sure they didn't come in huge numbers like the Spanish or the English or the French or the other Europeans did here in this part of southern North America and then Central and South America. As for North America, the Aboriginals, and the Vikings, the numbers, the odds were against the Vikings in that one. Yes, the technology they had was more advanced, but they had a little bit of numbers. They probably got jumped. And that's not bad. I'm not saying that's wrong. It is what it is. War is war. Anyway, I'm tired of this fucking video, so I'm gonna go. Tragedy, I'm out.